So I got a WhatsApp message from a young lady who listens to the podcast, and she reached out to me on WhatsApp. And I want to use this opportunity to put out my number, so that if you feel a need to reach out to me or to ask me a question on WhatsApp, I do WhatsApp a lot. This is my number: +234, which is the Nigeria code if you're calling from outside Nigeria. 80-232-66249. That's my number. Feel free to reach out to me. Send me a message on WhatsApp. I'll be more than happy to interact with you. I get a lot of messages on WhatsApp, so please, I would like to beg your indulgence to, if I don't reply you on time, it might take some days. I might reply you immediately, just depending on how loaded my WhatsApp messages are and how free I am at that time. But I will definitely get back to you. Another way in which you can reach out to me or ask me questions is by joining my Telegram community. It's called TA Community. It's on Telegram. You can reach out to me on WhatsApp. I will send you the invite, and you can join. It's a Q&A community where people can ask questions only, and I try my best to answer those questions. A lot of those questions are questions I answer, and I put my reply to those questions up here on the podcast for other people to benefit from. And I'm always very grateful for people that are generous with their questions. They allow me, some of them ask me questions privately, but they allow me to read out these questions in public and to answer them publicly for other people who can find value in my answers to these questions. So thank you for everyone who has taken out time to send me a question and has allowed me to share my answers to their questions on the podcast. I want to thank everybody on my Telegram community. Thank you very much for trusting me and for being vulnerable with your questions. So I have this question from this young lady, and it's a very interesting question. And I'm going to read it out right now. It says, God's provision has a worrisome trademark. He's always rescuing people. How about abundance? How about wealth? I don't want to be fed at the last minute. I don't want a hand-to-mouth experience. People's testimonies always take that shape. God doesn't support and provide wealth. Why does he wait until our resources are dried up, then he brings a rescue check? That's a very good question. And it's a question, I've asked myself also. And I think a lot of people share this sentiment that God has a fire brigade approach to rescuing us. Why does he always wait till we get to the end of our rope before he comes in and rescue us? Why does it seem to be a last minute? Why do we have to be facing lack in the face a lot of times before God comes through? Because that's what we testify about a lot, that God came through in the nick of time. Why does it have to be the nick of time? Why didn't he provide for us way before we felt a need for provision? Now, that's a very good question, and I want to answer that question by talking about abundance and consciousness. Abundance and consciousness. Now, one thing I want us to know is that abundance is a subconscious mindset. Abundance is a subconscious mindset. It is not a conscious mindset. Abundance is a subconscious mindset, not a conscious mindset. Lack is a conscious mindset. Abundance is a subconscious mindset. And what I mean by this is, once you become aware of a situation, you cannot operate in an abundant mindset concerning that thing. In fact, the fact that you are aware of it shows that you are operating with a scarcity mindset. Awareness and consciousness are not conducive environments for abundance to operate. And I'll try to break this down. And I want you to follow me closely in this podcast. You see, the Bible a lot of times encourages us to be like little children. When you read the Bible, whenever Jesus refers to children, it always tells us to emulate them. Now, what is it about children that we are to emulate? The thing about children, the unique thing about children that the Bible encourages us to emulate is their ignorance. Their ability to be blissfully unaware. We call it ignorance because we look down at it, on it as human beings. We look down at ignorance. Ignorance is not a compliment. But what the Bible tells us is to emulate the ignorant state of mind of children. Children are ignorant a lot of times about what is going on around them. The conditions and the details of things do not particularly concern or bother them. And that's why a lot of children perpetually operate with an abundant mentality. They have an abundant mentality. A lot of children. I'm talking about young children, as in really young children. So look at children from 1 to like 4. They have an abundant mentality. I have a 3-year-old, and I can say he has an abundance mentality because he exhibits it every single day. It's very hard to take my 3-year-old with me to the supermarket. He always wants to go to the supermarket, but I don't like taking him there. I don't like taking him there because he feels everything in the supermarket belongs to him. When we walk through the supermarket, he grabs what he wants. As long as it's within his reach, he will grab it and he's not letting it go. He tells you, mine. When you try to take it from him, he says, why did you take my biscuit? Why did you take my toy? He's blissfully ignorant about the need to pay for stuff. He has no concept of a transactional relationship. He has no concept of transaction, monetary transaction. When we go to the supermarket, he sees it as an opportunity to grab anything he wants. And he holds firmly to it he believes it's already his. If he can see it, he can take it. He just believes that those things are on display for him to choose from. He has an abundance mentality because he has no consciousness of lack. Absolutely none. He doesn't know how those things got there. He doesn't know how much it cost the owner of the supermarket to stock up the supermarket. He doesn't care what the profit the supermarket owner is trying to make. He doesn't care whether they pay rent. He doesn't care what's going to happen at the tail. He just knows he's taking that thing home with him. You see, when it comes to life, that is how God wants us to operate. Abundance is a subconscious attitude to life. Subconscious. It's not a conscious thing. Once you become conscious and you become knowledgeable, abundance will begin to diminish. Your mindset about abundance will begin to diminish. Knowledge is one of the biggest opposition to abundance. Ignorance is one of the biggest facilitators of abundance. Abundance is a subconscious state of mind. Once you become aware of how something is done, you begin to have a scarcity mentality. Another illustration I'm going to give you about abundance is my son, my older son. He's 8 years old and he loves to draw. He's a good artist. I believe he gets that from me because when I was his age, I used to draw like him too. But then, there was a time he drew something from TV and I asked him, how did you draw this thing? How do you remember what the eyes look like and the nose? Like he just drew it without an eraser. He just drew it one go. And I watched him draw without even a plan in his mind. Just one go. And he just knew what to draw. And he drew it well. And I asked him, how did you do this thing? And he looked at me with a very blank stare in his face, in his eyes. Blank look in his eyes. And you could tell that he didn't know what I wanted him to say. And then he shrugged, said, I don't know. And for me, that was enough answer. He was blissfully unaware, blissfully ignorant about how to draw. And that made me know that he had an abundance of that skill or talent called drawing. He was blissfully unaware. Didn't know how he was doing what he was doing. But he was doing it. Because drawing was in his subconscious, not in his conscious. It was something that came abundantly to him. He didn't have to worry about how it was going to end up. Once he picked up that pencil, he was going to draw. The how didn't matter. The principles didn't operate. As I said, he's an 8-year-old boy. He knows nothing about contrast, shade, scale, balance. He does it naturally, ignorantly, abundantly. Abundance is a subconscious state of mind. Once you become conscious of the how, you are already operating with a scarcity mentality. I had a friend in university who was such a good dancer. He danced easily. And every time he danced, it was such an attractive thing. So he had a lot of female friends, you understand? Because, dancing has an attractive vibe to it. People who can dance. I can't dance. But he could. And one day I asked him, can you teach me how to dance? I don't know how to dance. And he spent a lot of time thinking. And he said, Just listen to the beat. Just move to the rhythm of the beat. That didn't make much sense to me. I'm like, what beat? I'm hearing the same song with you now. And then I tried listening to it, and then I'll just, move my body. But then I was so conscious about it. So I was stiff. And I realized this couldn't have been what this guy was doing. He said it because he tried to articulate his abundance, but he couldn't. He wasn't listening to any beat. The cells in his body just vibrated in a particular way that mine couldn't. He didn't have a how. He just did it abundantly, ignorantly, without an awareness of a process. I used to teach logo design, and I had an academy where I used to teach people, but then it was always very frustrating. People would expect that for someone who did logo design for so long, it would be a pleasure teaching logo design, but it wasn't. It really wasn't. And I used to tell my wife, I'm not really enjoying this thing because I don't know how to express these things. They ask me questions and I don't know how to answer. Why did you use blue? Why did you choose this? Why did you choose this font? And sometimes I want to tell them, I just knew it was right. But that doesn't sound academic. It sounds too instinctive. Nobody pays for just an instinct. Academics is about a process, it's about steps, it's about articulating steps. I couldn't explain the subconscious part of logo design. People don't understand. When I tell them, I can see the logo even before it's done. I can touch it. I can even smell it. People don't understand. How can you smell a logo? How can you smell a font? I can see it, I can touch it. I know it has a personality. I interact with it like it's a human being. It's more than pixels to me. How do you explain that? Because I was abundantly creative when it came to logo design. I couldn't articulate my process. A lot of times I had to take time to try to articulate it and then teach it in an articulated way. But one of my biggest frustrations was my students when a lot of them were not delivering. And they would follow and say, sir, you said we should do this, and I did this, did that, and they now show me the product of their doing. And it looks nothing like the product of my doing. But they followed the steps. But it wasn't about the steps. It was the abundance I was operating in. Once you can articulate a thing, you are not abundant in that thing anymore. Abundance is a subconscious mindset. It actually is. So when people tell me, why doesn't God give us abundantly? We don't understand that abundance is not what God does. Abundance is how we think. Abundance is not what God does for us. Abundance is how we think about God. It's how we think. It's in your mind. Scarcity is not what God rescues us from. Scarcity is an aware state of mind that we allow ourselves slip into. We learn scarcity. Abundance is a default state of mind for every human being till we teach them scarcity. Like my son, who is 3 years old. I hate to say this, but we're beginning to teach him scarcity. We are. Every time we tell him, we can't take this, we can't take this. And then, Mommy, why? Daddy, why? Why do you take my toy? And we begin to tell him, it doesn't belong to you. And then we begin to teach him about money. The other day, he was giving money and he said he's going to use this money to buy something. He's beginning to learn that there's a barrier between him and what he sees. He's beginning to learn scarcity. You see, abundance is a subconscious state of mind. It's an unawareness. When we become very aware, you begin to see windows closing. And that's why this person has asked me, why does God make us come to the brink of something before he rescues us? Because you are beginning to count. You are counting how many more steps you have. You are beginning to listen to the beat and begin to think, am I going off beat? You are beginning to articulate how to draw. Anything you count is not abundant. Because counting is a state of awareness. You are bringing yourself, when you take a census, you want to be conscious of something. You see, there was a part of the Bible where David had nothing to do. There was no war and everything. He had won all the wars. And then he thought to himself, let me count all my soldiers. So he gave someone the assignment, go and count, take a census of everything I have. And God was upset with him. Because at that point, he began to slip from an abundant mindset to a scarcity mindset. And so what that invites is a doubt in God. So if God was to tell him at that point to go and fight, he would think, how many men do I have? Because he had taken a census. He would move by the amount of men he had, not by God's command. God was upset with him because he slid into a scarcity mindset when he was winning by abundance. You know what that meant? It meant that all the victories he had no concept of how many men he had. He was just fighting. Because fighting came to David naturally. He didn't know how it was done. When he wanted to fight Goliath, he didn't know how. That was different between him and Saul. Saul thought, I need armor, I need spear, I need this. He just walked. And along his way, he picked up stones. If you asked him why he picked up 5 stones, he didn't know. He didn't know the concept. And when Goliath saw it, said, what's this guy doing? And I'm sure even David himself didn't know what he was doing. He was blissfully unaware of the concept of warfare. Fighting a giant, something he had never done before. But it came to him instinctively how to fight a giant. No strategy, no maps, no reconnaissance, nothing like that. Just, all right, it's time to go and fight this guy, I'm going. Blissfully ignorant. That would have looked foolish to anyone. The problem with us is that we learn wisdom by trying not to look foolish. But then we do not understand. I'm going to say something controversial here. That the greatest wisdom always looks foolish. The greatest wisdom always looks foolish. But then we are taught in our lives, from very young, in school, traditional wisdom. that looks smart, that looks wise, that is articulate, that is strategic, that has a certificate, that plans for the future. If you do not plan for the future, you are foolish. I'm going to tell you a story that a lot of people will listen to and say, oh, that was a pretty foolish way to live your life. But I'll tell you about being blissfully unaware. See, there was a time I told God, this thing about money, I don't want to be aware of it anymore. And I told my wife, I want to be unaware. You understand? Because she was always telling me how much was in the bank account. I said, stop telling me how much is in the bank account. Because we have a joint account. I said, I don't want to be aware of it. I just want to carry this card. So I have the debit card. I have debit card because when I go out, she can send me a list of things. So I have debit card with me. I said, I don't want to be aware. So I am like, I don't look at when I spend, I don't look at the amount that is left over in terms of, whenever I use a debit card, you get sent an SMS of your bank balance. So I don't look at it. I don't look at it. I just spend. So there was this period, I think it was last year or so, or 2 years ago. I think it was 2023. 2 years ago, I come to this agreement with my wife. Please do not inform me about the balance. Just send me what it is you want, and I'll go and buy this thing with this card. And my wife was like, can you live like that? That's like a gamble you're taking. You just go inside and just believe that the card has it. So that's how I used to live. I remember this particular time, I had this person that sent me some money. And I had just come out of the supermarket and I got into the car. And the person sent me a WhatsApp message. I just sent you some money. Please check it and let me know if you got it. So I went into the app and I checked the amount the person had sent. Said some payment had come through. And when I checked it, to my surprise, if that person had not sent that money, the amount of stuff I had bought in that supermarket, if I had gone to the till, they would have rejected my debit card. They would have told me insufficient funds. That shocked me, that I was about to overdraw on my account. What the person had sent had made up for what I was going to buy. But on a good day, if that payment didn't come in, they would have given back and said, oh no, insufficient accounts, insufficient funds, or whatever it is. I don't even know what they say because it never happened to me. But then it wouldn't have gone through. It would have been embarrassing. I would have had to give them back all their items and go back into my car. But you see, I wasn't aware. I had a blissful abundance mentality. That as long as I hold that card, part time, it will afford me what I want. When I present it, it wouldn't be given back to me as not having enough. Now, a lot of people say, that's a very immature way of living life. You go around with a card just believing that. You see, that's why I tell you that a lot of times the greatest wisdom always appears foolish. The problem is a lot of people as believers don't work with the greatest wisdom. That's why we always have the mentality that God comes through in the nick of time, because we are too aware of the nick of time. There is no nick of time. That is only a simulation in your mind. That time is about to run out is a simulation in your mind that you've allowed. God doesn't come through in the nick of time. God is always available. Just that we are the one taking a census of our time. And it displeases God that we take this census, because we turn him into a fire brigade and not a father. God is a father. He doesn't come to our rescue. He is there with us. This thing we say, God comes. Where is he coming from? He never left. It was your mindset that didn't see God. So when we say that, why does God allow me to come to the end of my rope before he comes through? It's because, number one, you saw a rope. You didn't see his arms. Scarcity is a mindset, a conscious mindset of I am going to fall. Abundance is a subconscious mindset that I don't even know there's a ground. The fish is not aware that there is dry land. Most of them, they're not aware that there's the concept of dry land. It's when you catch them and put them on, they're like, oh, wait, I never knew this was, I never knew. I just realized that I can't swim anymore. The average fish born in the ocean has no awareness of dry land. They think the whole world is water because they are not schooled. Have no awareness of dry land. For them, the world is water. If a fish could talk and he died, he'll tell you, oh, describe the world. Oh, it's all water. Still water, turbulent water, shallow water, deep water. That's what the world is. It's when you catch it in a hook, with a hook, and put it on dry land, that they don't stroll to dry land. Nobody teaches them. They don't explore their way to dry land. They live in the abundance of water. You see, I'm going to talk about oxygen. And if we had the mindset to live in like we do about oxygen, we'll understand the concept of abundance. You see, I tell people oxygen is what we need the most on earth. Oxygen is what we need, not money. But how many of you wake up with an awareness of oxygen? No awareness. Blissful ignorance. Breathing is such a subconscious thing for you. How many of you counted how many times you have breathed today? How many breaths have you taken in? And how many did you take out? Did you count? Do you know how long you can hold your breath for? We are not conscious of breathing. And that's why we live in abundance of oxygen. You don't go to a place thinking, will there be enough oxygen for me there? You just go there believing that there's oxygen waiting for you there. Ignorantly, blissfully, unaware. That's one thing COVID taught us. Taught us how important breathing was. I remember during that COVID period, you say, am I breathing well? Can I hold my breath? Can I hold my breath for inhale and then exhale? Can I hold my breath for up to how many seconds? Am I struggling to breathe? We became aware. So many people died. Awareness brings about a scarcity mentality. Scarcity brings about death. And scarcity is not a physical condition. It's a mental condition. Will God come through? I'll have you know that during COVID, there were some people in villages that didn't know that COVID was going on. They had no televisions, no radios. I can almost be very sure that if you go to those places, deaths didn't increase or decrease. Things just went about normally. It was the aware ones. Check it out. The most developed nations, the most deaths. The most deaths were in the most developed nations. The most unaware ones lived blissfully. God doesn't come through in the nick of time. We need to stop counting time for God. God is always there. The problem is that your mind is not always with Him. God is always there, but our mind is not always with Him. You see, when you're gathering for the future, that is not abundance. That someone has enough for the future, and awareness that I have enough for the future is not abundance. It's acquisition. It only leads to selfishness, worry, self-centeredness. That's why the Bible tells us about the parable of the rich man. He was so aware of how much he had for the future. And God says, tonight, because you are so aware of your abundance, you will lose everything. You are so aware of your so-called abundance, which is just acquisition, you will lose everything. Because you have the ultimate scarcity mentality that you feel, I can rest in my acquisition. God doesn't come through for us in the nick of time. God is always there for us. God is not a fire brigade, not a firefighter, not a rescuer. He's a father. He is a father. We need to enter into the rest, the subconscious state of mind called abundance. Whenever I go to speak, I've said it before, I don't use a slide. I don't like using slides. And I thought about it. Whenever I use the slide, the speaking engagement doesn't go very well. Because I'm too conscious about what comes next. What comes next? Do I have enough time? Can I, it doesn't flow. It's always forced. So I don't use slides. I don't have presentation slides. So when people invite me to speak or to give presentation or to lecture, I don't have presentation slides. I'm like, let me talk from the abundance of my mind. So I talk ignorantly, unaware of what's going to come next, what the next point would be. Even as I speak on this podcast, I have no points jotted down, nothing. Every time I jot down points, the podcast never goes well. I don't know when this podcast is going to end, how many more minutes I have, what my last point would be, where I'm actually going. I just know I feel led to talk. So when people ask me, how do you record the podcast? I don't know. I'm blissfully unaware. And because of that, I have an abundance of what to say and how to say it. Abundance is a subconscious mindset. Stop taking account and see God all around you. God doesn't come. God is there. It is there, ready for you. It's like my son who walks through the aisles of a supermarket. He believes it's there waiting for him. He goes to a supermarket with excitement of, oh, let's see what I can get today, because it's uninformed. I go with some anxiety because I'm thinking, oh, hope the prices of things have not changed too much, because I'm too informed. Be like little children and live in God's abundant mindset. My name is Tola T.A. Alabi, and this is the TA Podcast.